Today we're going to talk about insomnia, and it's not going to be the run-of-the-mill insomnia discussion. We're going to talk about the deal with insomnia and death. Can you really die from insomnia? Is it possible that one night you'll finally fall asleep and not wake up? The answer is yes. But it's not likely. In fact, it's very unlikely. You're going to want to stay up and listen to this entire episode to find out who exactly is at risk of fatal insomnia and why 99.999% of you do not even fit that category in this episode of The Why Behind Your Z's. Welcome to the Why Behind Your Z's podcast, the show that helps you maximize your sleep one night at a time. Brought to you by sleepyoudeserve.com. Welcome to this episode of the Why Behind Your Z's. My name is Paul Bright, certified sleep science coach and United States Air Force veteran. And today we are going to talk about insomnia and death. I want to give you raw details, the real truth. And I promise that for everyone listening, by the end of this episode, you'll be less anxious about fatal insomnia. So for those of you who have sleep disorders, but not necessarily insomnia, let me describe some symptoms. Once in a while, people have a sleepless night. This is normal for almost everyone. You might get an hour or 2 hours of sleep and not even really know that you got that much because you'd been up so long. And most times you can associate an insomnia night to a life event. Your newborn parents, you had an extra tough work week, too much caffeine, too much partying. It happens. Even a few nights in a row of insomnia, just having a trouble sleeping, it happens. And then one day you just catch up. Maybe it's like over the weekend. And instead of getting 1 hour and 2 hours and you used to get 6 to 8 hours, you're out for like 12, 14 hours. You wake up every 4 hours and go right back to sleep. And then you catch up. That's normal for people. But for people with chronic insomnia, this happens more than a few nights a year. It happens a few nights a week, even nightly for a lot of people. They try to sleep, but it just doesn't happen. Again, 1 hour, 2 hours, but they barely even notice that they passed out for 2 hours because they've been awake for so long. Those of you who already have my free guide on how sleep works, and how you guys already know that you typically sleep 6 to 8 hours a night. And more importantly, you get 3 to 4 cycles of restorative deep sleep where your muscles get rest and repair, your immune system's built up, and your memory is improved. Chronic insomnias don't get all that, and they're often running on fumes. They miss out on restorative benefits, and insomniacs function just enough to help everyone else in their lives. Then they have this day or two where they crash and they finally catch up on some sort of sleep, but then the cycle starts over again most nights of the week. I've experienced bouts of this. I had a very physical job when I was in the military, and we had ever-changing work hours. And oftentimes I would have to resort to like extended cat naps throughout the day just to satisfy the mission. You know, when I first started drinking coffee, it was actually when I worked from the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. That was the only way I could stay awake some nights. I learned how to drink coffee all hours of the days and nights. I spent months at a time doing this while also trying to be a family man. What's that feel like? I mean, you start losing stuff, like little things, all the time. You have trouble doing small tasks. You also suffer from CRS. You can't remember. Okay, you know how that goes. You even find bouts of depression because you want to be so fully present for others and for yourself, and it's a challenge with insomnia. It can feel like you just want to die sometimes. But can you? Can you really die from chronic insomnia? Like I said at the start, the technical answer is yes. There is an insomnia-related disease that results in death. But 99.99% of insomniacs likely do not have it, in my best guesstimate. I can hear you insomniacs out there now. But what if I do? What if I have it? Well, we're going to talk about that specific disease after the break.
Hi, I'm Lauren Wolf, host of the Your Zen Friend podcast. On this podcast, I share wisdom from working as a licensed mental health therapist for more than 20 years. Using storytelling and lighthearted humor, each episode explores themes on personal growth, including tips and strategies to improve your mental health and overall well-being. By subscribing to this podcast, you will get a new episode every Tuesday and also receive a drop of Zen, a short guided meditation each Friday. If you're a perfectly imperfect human like me, who's always striving to do better and feel better, then this podcast is for you. Find Your Zen Friend on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This podcast is intended to provide education and information related to sleep and sleep disorders. All advice and suggestions given in this podcast are based on my personal experience and education as a certified sleep science coach. If you have a mental health or medical condition or suspect you may have one that is disturbing your sleep, consult your doctor before engaging in any suggestions you hear on this show. Okay, so what is this insomnia disease called that results in death, and what are the symptoms? It's called fatal familial insomnia. It's a rare genetic condition, which means it's usually inherited from one or two parents, and there's a family history of fatal insomnia, of people dying from lack of sleep. So let's stop right there. Does your family have a history of fatal insomnia? If the answer is no, feel free to stop listening to this podcast right now, do a dance of joy, sign up for my email list, and you'll get even more positive and encouraging tips and news about ways to help your sleep, because you do not have fatal familial insomnia. It's genetic. In fact, go take a nap. You'll be fine. If it's not already happened in your family history, it's likely not going to happen to you. But let's move on, because there's some other important characteristics of this disease that, if you're still wondering, you're going to want to know. The first characteristic is that it's a progressive disease. The symptoms you experience are the result of things happening inside you based on the genetic mutation, and the disease takes place in stages. The first stage has the usual insomnia symptoms, the low energy, difficulty functioning, but then there's the addition of psychiatric symptoms like auditory hallucinations, increased paranoia, and panic attacks. There's also muscle stiffness, and this takes place over about 4 months. So these are things that a lot of insomniacs out there have experienced. But what did I just say? It takes place over 4 months before it progresses into something else. So if you've had these type of symptoms for years, not just 4 months, but for years, in my opinion, that's more good news. You likely do not have fatal familial insomnia, because after 4 months, it progresses to stage 2. And in stage 2, the psychiatric symptoms worsen. There's also increased cortisol in the blood pressure goes up, sweating happens all the time, breathing and heart rate become more rapid. This goes on for 5 months until stage 3, where the entire sleep-wake cycle becomes significantly disrupted. And I've got all the particulars and the scientific information on how this disease operates if you want to If you want to get a direct link to that, just check my show notes. I've got this in there. The fourth and final stage is when your brain and body have completely degraded. Dementia sets in. You can't even speak, and eventually you slip into a coma and die. That is grim. That is the raw truth. That is sad. And if you are listening to this podcast, you likely don't have fatal familial insomnia. Again, check with your doctor. As I said in the disclaimer, I don't know your familial history, but I'm betting heavy on that you just have regular insomnia. At least you can take the anxiety of impending death out of your mind now, because if you're listening to this, your mind is still fully functioning. If you had insomnia for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years, it does suck. If your symptoms are mostly like what it sounds like in stage 1, it's likely not going to progress to stage 2, and then 3, and then 4, which ends in death. You have insomnia, not fatal familial insomnia. Thank goodness, because that means there's hope. So what do you do next? If you're new to my podcast, this is a good time to listen to the previous episodes. I've covered every life domain where I feel like you can find the obstacles as well as the strengths to improve your sleep. You know, your nutrition, your body, your bedroom, your mind space. All of these domains, and especially if you can link them all with nature, they all have tools that you can build off of to maximize your sleep. You can also sign up for my email list. The link, once again, is in the show notes, and get free sleep help every other week straight to your inbox. You get a free book also that teaches you on how sleep is supposed to work. And finally, listen to the next episode. It will be the last of this season, but you're gonna like what I have to say about next season and what's in store for you. Just let me help you get the sleep you deserve. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Why Behind Your Z's. For more information and additional advice on how to help you get the sleep that you deserve, check the show notes for our email subscriber list. You can also visit our website, sleepyoudeserve.com.